Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm Chris Love, reporting to you from Chalk Talk Studios West, also known as my brother's apartment in Santa Barbara, California.
And I'm John Stork. Well, Chris, it was obviously a great weekend this past weekend, as we kind of discussed. Team race champs all up and down the Eastern Seaboard. And, looking ahead from here, obviously a lot of teams. Unfortunately, team racing season is behind them. They didn't get through this past week. And they're going to start looking forward to fleet race season. We've got a lot of good fleet races coming up, but there are a handful of teams that were fortunate enough to get through this past weekend, and now they get the reward of continuing to practice for Team Race Nationals and looking for bigger and brighter things down the road.
Have you ever wondered why it's so important to be a member of U.S. Sailing? We are all U.S. Sailing, from beginners to experts, from one-design sailors to offshore cruisers, and from instructor trainers to race officials. U.S. Sailing supports all types of sailors in countless ways. Where would sailing be without instruction and safety standards? Where would we be without Learn to Sail programs? Join or renew today to support these resources and ensure sailing remains a lifetime activity for everyone.
So why don't we start off, Chris, with sort of a breakdown of this past weekend and see who those teams are that are going to be moving on and get to keep team racing at practice.
Yeah, let's do it. Starting down in the South Atlantic, things went pretty much as expected. Charleston, USF, and Eckerd were the only teams to attend the regatta. They finished in that order, although every team took at least one loss, so a little bit of competition there on that one-day event. And then up in New England, boy, it was close. A four-way tie for places 3 through 6. These teams are just as deep and just as competitive as we thought. Everybody taking multiple losses, including undefeated Yale.
Yeah, I think NISA champs. I think we were right about one thing. That's that this regatta is always really unpredictable. But we were clearly wrong about some other stuff. Yale obviously did not really walk away with the event. BC did great. We kind of expected Yale to be right there with them. They had a few stumbling points along the way, but everything else, it's a really, really tough event. I think one thing that we probably did a poor job of analyzing ahead of time is forgetting how good Colin Merrick and Amanda Callahan are at coaching team racing. A lot of the young kids watching this show and, involved with team racing on a high school and even young kids in college now don't know that the two of them have won Team Race Worlds twice, finished second another time, and won the Hinman 4 times together, and Colin won it a 5th time on his own. So, for my money, there's no better coaches for teaching the game of team racing at the highest level than those two. And so, that was really the same group that kind of came out of nowhere last year to win NISA Team Race Champs. We shouldn't be all that surprised that they finished second this year. So Roger Williams, obviously, tremendous job. And then the other big surprise, I think, in NISA, Harvard, after a couple of really great weekends, just kind of missing out. But like you said, there was a big tie there, 4-way tie. And it's just, that's how it goes sometimes. I'm sure Harvard's really disappointed, but that group from Tufts, they earned it, and that's a really great accomplishment for them.
Yeah, and I know those teams will continue to practice team racing and sharpen their skills, so they'll be at the top of their game come Nationals time. Well, finally, for the weekend, the third conference having their team race championship was the Mid-Atlantic, and this was, I think, even closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, Chris. I think we were right. There was basically going to be a 4-team battle for the second 2 spots. What we were wrong about, and my alma mater is probably pretty upset with me, is Hobart really gave it a good run. Went 5-2 in the first round and really battled hard. From that point, ultimately losing out on a tiebreaker. But I think the regatta was very competitive, and I think the 4 teams that are going on obviously are going to kind of keep honing their skills. And the interesting thing to see is going to be, how much better can they get, and also how good are those top 2 teams. They had some challenges through this weekend, but I think the real challenges for them is how well can they do at nationals? Are those teams that can actually win nationals, and they're going to have to practice really hard to be able to do that.
And here to tell us about The championship regatta this weekend is one of the stars from the 4th place qualifying team from Fordham, Evan Morgan. Evan, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
So Evan, John and I looked at this last week, and we knew it was going to be a fight for those last 2 spots. But who knew it would be this close? You guys actually had to do a sail-off to get that spot, right?
Yeah, it really came down to the last race. It was a little nerve-wracking going in, knowing that it was all up to one race. We didn't think it was going to be that close, seeing that we were sitting on shore all day just waiting to get the last rotations off, trying to figure out who was going to end up going to the next round.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that was pretty exciting and pretty wild way to finish it. One question I have for you, Evan, is obviously you're a freshman. This is all pretty new, and so it's a little bit different. Some of those guys, some of your teammates, guys and girls, have been there for a while working towards this. What's the team's overall reaction? Obviously they've got to be psyched, but what was the real mood heading back to campus after qualifying for your first team race nationals for your school?
Yeah, so we're actually a very young team, and so it was really cool to have such a close in age group of us moving on to the next level. We were all pretty stoked about being able to really represent Fordham at the next level. There's been a lot of firsts for our team this year, and so this is just another one to kind of add to our resume per se.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. I mean, I love when teams break down big barriers, and there's really none bigger than qualifying for your first team race nationals. So congratulations. One more question. You're obviously you're a freshman and you've had a great year. Tell me a little bit about another freshman on your team, Johnny Norfleet. Obviously a first year head coach for you guys, and tell me what it's been like with him and how his first year's going. Obviously you guys have had a good run, and he's got to be really excited, but I'm just wondering how it's been for you.
It's been really great to have Johnny come on board when I came on board, so I'm really going to have 4 years of a great coach. We've been getting all the practice we've needed, all the coaching. He's really been there to kind of help us from the technical standpoint to the mental hurdles of getting over we need any sort of mental hurdle after a loss or after a really bad set. He's really good at making sure that we kind of get over that little blip and move on with a clear mind to the next aspect of the regatta. I think he brings a lot to the table. I'm really excited that he's going to be here throughout this year, next year, and hopefully moving forward. I think he's really great as a coach so far, and only time will tell to see if he can really get us to that next level. And I think he will be able to.
Evan, I know I follow as many of the teams as I can. It makes it a lot easier with social media nowadays. I see pictures coming out of Fordham all the time of you guys at the New York Yacht Club, shaking hands with administration, ringing the bell on campus. Tell me about what kind of support you're getting from the university over the past couple of years with all these barriers you're breaking down.
So we've really been a growing team. In the last few years, we've really made some strides funding-wise. We're a club sport, so we don't get all of the advantages that we'd like of some of the other sports on campus. But that really doesn't hold us back as much as you'd expect. We get so much funding from donors, and Joe Sullivan, our sailing director, really does a great job of making sure that we have everything we need taken care of, coaching-wise, boat-wise. And actually, the New York Yacht Club thing you mentioned was just one of the Commodore, Vice Commodore, Fordham alums, and they wanted to have our end-of-year brunch or dinner there to really just kick off because we had a pretty stellar fall, leaps and bounds better from past years.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to see, and congratulations on everything so far. And you've got a lot more college sailing left ahead in your career. What does the team do from here now that you're moving into fleet racing season and looking ahead to nationals?
It's really going to be focused on trying to get as much time on the water, seeing that we had a late start because everything was frozen in up here, but so did everyone, but we had a particularly late start. So we're just going to have to keep going through practice, using every single moment to make sure that we get boat handling down, every little aspect of team racing, fleet racing, hammered down so that we really can perform at our peak level come nationals.
Yeah, that's great. It's awesome that you guys get to keep practicing team racing. You know, that's one of the most disappointing things when you don't qualify for team racing is that the team basically stops team racing at practice. So, you know, my last question for you is, what's the biggest thing that you guys have to work on, you know, on the team racing side to potentially find yourselves in the Final Four in Newport?
So we're a really young team, and I think that's one of the advantages, but also a disadvantage. Just time on the water and working together as a group of 6 to really make sure that everybody knows what is going on when. It's one of the things that we're going to have to practice over the next couple of weeks to really make sure that we're all on the same page. Everybody has the playbook memorized. Everybody's on the same page basically for every single play that could go. And I think that's one of the things that we worked on this weekend and we're really successful with, being able to recognize mistakes that we made and learning from those each race, seeing that we've only had so little time on the water.
Well, that's great. You guys are clearly headed in the right direction. Congrats again, and really thanks a lot for joining us, Evan.
Yeah, thanks so much, Evan. Congrats to you and your whole team on a great weekend of sailing down in Mesa. Well, finally on our list of regattas to look back at, we've got the other half of college sailing, and that's women's sailing. After a successful U.S. Team Race Championships last fall and a 5-city Southern swing this winter, the Zim 15 has again been selected for this year's championships. Designed specifically for college and post-college sailors, the skiff-like feel, carbon rig, and laminated sails make it a light air rocket which is easily depowered as the breeze builds. Contact Zim Sailing to order your new or charter Zim 15 today and have a blast sailing the circuit this summer. The Emily Wick was a big interconference at Coast Guard. All the big names in women's sailing were there.
Yeah, obviously a big event. Really the last major interconference women's event before most of the conferences have their women's conference champs in 2 weeks. And so this is really kind of, you know, you really start to see the women's side really starting to take shape. And this is the last time that we're going to have, you know, the big teams from around the country getting together on one weekend, and so it's pretty exciting, and we're definitely starting to see some of the good teams kind of rise up.
Yale's Morgan Kiss and Natalia Doris put a smackdown on the rest of A Division at the Emily Wick to bring the Bulldogs their first big win of the season. Now, for the past few years, Yale has been a dominant force in women's sailing, but this is the first interconference for fleet racing that the women's team has won this spring.
Yeah, it's interesting with Yale. I think you know, we and a lot of other people would probably have predicted that they would have had more regatta wins at the women's events to this point, especially considering that Morgan has sailed most of the events in A Division for them, and she's obviously a tremendous sailor. She's having a good year again. But the reality is, you know, this spring's been a little tough on the women's side. They've had a lot of kind of big breeze events or shortened events because of no wind one day or really light, and so, you know, there has been some oddities to it. So I mean, if I'm a Yale fan out there, I'm not all that concerned. I think your women's team is going to be pretty much what we expected coming down the stretch here,
and certainly not taking anything away from them. They have had very good results. This year, a 5th at the Dellenbaugh. This past, the weekend before last, a 2nd at St. Mary's and a 4th at Navy. But another team that is looking very sharp the past couple weeks is Brown, taking the win at their home regatta 2 weeks ago at the Dellenbaugh, and then following it up this weekend with a 2nd place finish at the Wick. I'd say right now this is the hottest women's team. We'll see if they can continue that right on through.
Yeah, Brown obviously having a great spring here. Megan Grappengetta-Rudnick, after an All-American year as a freshman. Has taken over A division this year, and she's sailing great. And you know, they've got a few seniors helping them out in B division, and they're probably having their best year, honestly. Kelly McGlynn and Johanna Kincaid, and you know, winning at the Dellenbaugh, Brown is one of the most tricky and most deceptive home court advantage venues that I can really remember in NISA. You know, it seems like a pretty straightforward place to sail, but I've seen the home team win there more than I can really recall. I mean, it seems like they always do well there. So I'm not all that surprised that a team that good wins at the home event. But Coast Guard is also a really, really hard, tricky place to sail. And for them to go to the Emily Wick this past weekend, sail great and finish second, they're obviously riding a great deal of momentum and going ahead into, you know, NISA Women's Champs 2 weeks down the road. I think they're feeling really good about themselves.
John, you remember episode 1, we said we would like to talk about women's college sailing, but just didn't feel like we had enough data yet. We had results that were kind of all over the board and didn't know if they were really going to reflect the way the rest of the season would go. Well, there's one team that you know, we could have guessed right back then was going to be a force at the end of the season, and that's College of Charleston. You know, back then they had won the Navy Women's, they had a 4th at St. Mary's, and then they followed it up at the Dellenbaugh with a 4th place finish. Now, they didn't sail the Emily Wick this weekend, you know, coming all the way from Sasa. They only come up to New England a few times, but looking really strong and no surprise, right? Returning their All-American skipper, Claire Cooper. Yeah,
Cougars, you know, obviously they're having a great spring as well. And you know, while they may not have been at everything, and they're certainly not at the Emily Wick this past weekend, I think the Cougars are definitely on the right track, and I think they'll be a viable threat come nationals, and you know, maybe top 5, top 3, and who knows what else. I mean, I think Claire Cooper has been sailing great all year, and the rest of the squad is really coming to form. They've had some youth in B division, but that seems to really be gaining experience, and they're getting better all the time.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, thinking back to the first episode of the season, you had some teams that you never would have guessed would be up at the top. MIT finished 14th at Navy, and who would have guessed that they would follow that up with a 3rd place finish at Dellenbaugh and a 3rd place finish this weekend. MIT really showing that they're in full swing now, in full championship mode.
Yeah, MIT, you know, I'm having a little bit of deja vu. I mean, last year I was coaching against them, but right around this time of the year last year, we were all saying the same thing. It was like, wow, where are MIT's, the lady engineers, where are they coming from, you know? And really, you know, they've got a great group of coaches there. And this group of girls, it's really, you know, with the exception of maybe, you know, a couple of seniors that graduated last year, this is virtually the same group that's making this push again. And so they know what it takes, and this is a real veteran group, and they're clearly riding that momentum that they had last spring. They know how to do it, and they're really on the right track, and good for them.
Got to give a nod to the home team from this weekend, Coast Guard, finishing 4th. That's their best finish of the season, but they've also got some pretty good results. They had a 6th at the Dellenbaugh and a 6th at St. Mary's. Couple of returning sailors and some new faces too.
Yeah, Coast Guard, you know, they you know, we were talking about them, if you recall, we talked about them a lot in the fall as kind of a really hot women's team. They won a bunch of regattas early on in the fall, and they're clearly kind of coming to form. One big thing is, you know, Nikki Barnes has been sailing a lot of co-ed events, and so when she comes back around, if she comes back around to sail women's events, that's obviously going to help them. And while she's been sailing co-ed events, the rest of their girls have all been getting a lot better. You know, the girls that have been there in the past, they're clearly working hard, and they're getting better all the time. And then obviously you can't help but notice this past weekend, the youngest in a long lineage of roadie girls that have come to Coast Guard. Dana Rohde, great performance in A division this past weekend as a freshman, and so if the freshman is coming along that quickly, it's just making that team that much more deep. And especially when you get to NISA champs and then women's nationals, it really pays to have a deep team, and if you can have interchangeable parts and, one person's not having a great day, if you can sub in somebody to get the job done the way that, that your team is capable of, if you have multiple people that can do that, that's a real blessing. And I think Coast Guard's heading in that direction.
So those are some of the top finishers from the women's circuit so far this season. But, and I'm talking a huge but, that's not the end of the story. There are a few other teams that may not have the results to show it, but still have some of the best women's teams in college sailing. The reason being their top female skippers are also their top co-ed skippers. The most glaring example of this has got to be Reineke. The last time she stepped foot in a women's event was November 2nd, 2014 at the conference qualifiers. Since then, she's been sailing A division and co-eds. She's been the anchor on their team racing team. They just can't afford to give her up to women's until until it really counts, and that'll be coming up soon.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, she's one of the best sailors in the country. Outside of college as well. I mean, she's one of our bright talents, and somebody for all of U.S. sailors to be proud of and to watch as a fan. So I mean, if she does come around to the women's side, there's definitely an adjustment for her. There are some different styles to women's racing in college. And so there are some adjustments. You can't just expect somebody who's been sailing co-ed and team racing to jump into women's sailing and just clean up. It doesn't always go that way, but there's no doubt that the BC team will be, much more powerful with her on it.
And if you've been following along, you probably noticed a trend. We're talking a lot about New England teams, with the exception of Charleston. Everybody has been from New England, and that's kind of just the way college sailing has been going the last few years. Very heavy on the women's talent up in the Northeast. But there are some other teams that we need to look at. One of those is Navy. Navy has Mary Hall, who's just like Erica, has been sailing the co-ed events and the team racing events, but we're bound to see her come conference championship time. Yeah,
Mary Hall, she's been tremendous for the midshipmen her whole career, and I think she's a senior now. I'm pretty sure she's a senior now, and she's just had a great career, and when the conditions are right, she's obviously, she's got a little bit more of a condition specific, but she's always good. But if the conditions are right, she's nearly untouchable. And once she comes back around to the women's side, if that's what they choose to do, Navy's going to be really dangerous with her on that side of the sport as well.
And John, finally, you're best to speak about this, but there's one more team with a big gap in the women's circuit, and that is the 2013 and 2014 Quantum Female Sailor of the Year.
A year ago, I probably would have been part of this decision-making process, but now I'm pretty far removed from it, and I'm not really going to speculate as to what they'll do. But obviously, Deirdre is a great sailor, and I have a lot of respect and a lot of pride for her and her abilities. And we'll just have to see what they do. Dartmouth, they have some unique academic challenges towards the end of the year, still being in school, and but I think most likely that we'll probably see her, and if we do, I think Dartmouth will be in good shape too. They graduated some good seniors last year, but they have a lot of talent left, and I think they're just still trying to get organized. I think the frozen water has kind of hurt them this spring, but if they can kind of circle the wagons and get organized enough to make it through NISA champs, I think they could be a real threat come nationals.
Well, that's going to do it for us. We don't have too much time to devote to this coming weekend, but there is the first women's conference champs of the year, the PCCSC women's conference champs right here in Santa Barbara, California. 4 berths to women's semifinals. Be sure to check that out on TechScore, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck this weekend. Have fun, everybody.